Okay, so as Mr. Isley said, my name is Ms. Kalinowski. I don't know how many of you I've seen. There's two children in this room right now that have been in my area of the basement that I recognize. One I have in my interior design class, and one I had in my summer camp from a few years ago. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I chose this topic because it's what I'm knowledgeable in. I am in a non-traditional role for my gender. So I want to talk a little bit about what traditional roles kind of look like. So this is a short little book. It's played with some music. I don't know if that will...
It should play, yeah, the speaker hooked up.
So read the pages and make sure you're seeing what the boys do and what the girls do.
I'm glad I'm a boy with fishing and baseball and roller skates too. I have lots more fun than you do. Oh, gee, you're jealous of me, and I know the reason why. I'm so glad I was born just a plain little boy. So am I. Oh, gee, I'm glad I'm a girl. Oh, gee, I'm glad I'm a girl. With cooking and baking and little dolls too. I have lots more fun than you do. Oh, gee, you're jealous of me, and I know the reason why. I'm so glad I was born just a plain little girl. So am I.
All right, so surprisingly, that book is kind of hard to get a copy of right now. What were some things that you guys noticed about it? What were some roles that were in the book that maybe struck out to you?
Women were made like stay at home.
Yeah, so girls are gonna cook and boys are gonna eat.
One that stuck out to me when boys fix things and girls need things fixed. That
Yeah.
really irked me.
Yeah, that bothered me too. There was, of this whole book, there's only 2 pages that didn't bother me, and one was boys are fathers and girls are mothers in a very antiquated sense. We can say that, right? Like, they didn't say that only girls can provide loving care as a parent. So in that sense of the page, I get it. And then the other one is boys are heroes and girls are heroines. So they weren't saying that girls can't, be heroes themselves, but just maybe more of the name to that. I don't want to play that again. Not a great song to go with it. That was Tiny Tim, by the way, for those of you who don't know who that was. What I think is interesting too about this book is that it was from, anybody want to take a guess? What year? Oh, too far, Miss Kay, too far. 1972. I know, so like, it wasn't that long ago, right? Like, I mean, it's for you guys, you're like, dang, that's old. But like, when I'm thinking about it, like that could have been read to me in my childhood. Not that I'm from 1972. Not that you guys care. Okay, so let's talk about female and male, what we attribute to personality traits. So some conforming ideas for this would be females are not aggressive. They have to be dependent. They're easily influenced. They're submissive. They're passive. They're home-oriented. They're easily hurt emotionally. They're indecisive. They're talkative. They're gentle. They're sensitive to others' feelings. They desire security. They cry a lot. They're emotional. They're verbal. They're kind. They're tactful and nurturing. All you ladies in here, that's what you are. Boys, let's talk about you. You're aggressive. You're independent. You're not easily influenced. You're dominant. You're active. You're worldly. You don't get hurt easily with your emotions. You are decisive. You're not talkative. You're tough. You're less sensitive to others' feelings. You don't care about security. You rarely cry. You're logical. You're analytical. You're cruel. You're blunt. And you're not nurturing. Right? So, looking at those conforming stereotypes, what kind of jobs are us women expected to have?
Nurses.
Nurses. Anybody else have something else that a woman should do?
Secretary.
Maybe a secretary, a mother, teacher. Yeah, so these are all very much in line with what typical female jobs are. Cosmetologist, we didn't say, but someone who's going to do your hair and your makeup for you in general will be a woman. This is, again, what we're saying for conforming. Men, what are men going to do? What are men jobs? Business, CEO, construction, trades, doctors, principals, engineers, lawyers. So, and it's interesting with me being a teacher, I didn't research for this so much about the restrictions for women as teachers versus for men, but I'll talk a little bit about that. So the big thing for me to talk about non-conforming gender stereotypes when we talk about jobs is Rosie the Riveter. Like, this is really when I think the big explosion of letting women do work outside of the home was a necessity. Our men went off to war, and they were like, we have to build planes, we have to build tanks, we have stuff we got to do, and no one's here to do it because most of their workforce was gone. So women came in, over 6 million women came into the working factories. And not only were they working at the factories, but their production and their quality increased by hiring women. And they paid them 60% less, or 60% of what their male counterparts would have been paid. So after the war, where did she go? They sent her back home. They fired her. They laid her off. Even though she had a better production and better quality and they paid her less, they sent her home when the men came back from war. And they weren't hired back, even though they had seniority at that point. It's interesting, they were qualified to do the job while the men were gone, but as soon as the men came back, they no longer were qualified. For some reason, their qualifications changed. And we go back to those conformed gender roles. So they're back in the kitchen, they're back at home. Some went on to do teacher or secretarial work, but most did not. So I thought that this was interesting. I looked up some things that you might find of interest to you in particular, are things that women can't do or couldn't do. They were not allowed to ride on trains. The experts thought that our uteruses would literally fly out of our body at 50 miles an hour. I know. You could be fired if you became pregnant. And in fact, they wouldn't even hire women for a long time in birthing age. So if you were considered in birthing age, you might not even get a job because they would be afraid you would take some time off to be a mother, which is what the expectation was. Teachers had some very strict regulations as far as what they were allowed or not allowed to do. They couldn't date. They weren't allowed to be seen in public without a chaperone. And if you got married, you couldn't be a teacher anymore. True stories. I know. Women could not run in marathons. Anyone in here run for fun? Ugh, gross. I mean, good for you guys, but you would not be able to run a marathon if you wanted to, not until 1972, when women were allowed to run in the Boston Marathon, but only certain women because they thought it caused infertility. They're real worried about you making choices about your own bodies with that, if you've noticed a little bit of a trend with that. You could not get a credit card before 1974 without your husband's written approval. You could not serve on a jury until 1971. Now, to be fair, that's a little misleading because in some states, women were allowed to serve on the jury, but not until 1971 were all women, or all states, allowed to allow women on the jury. You could not serve on the front lines of our military until 2013. And the one that I think is most interesting for me is women could not be astronauts. They were not allowed to be in pilot training until 1979, which means that Sally Ride was our first female astronaut in 1983 because that's the length of the training program. And here, I thought that this was a title from a satirical magazine or article. There was supposed to be a historic all-female astronaut trip this year, 2019, and it was canceled because they didn't have enough medium-sized astronaut suits.
What? Guys, we built this ship. Everything's good to go. Where are your clothes?
Not even a joke. I thought for sure that that was pulled right out of the headlines of The Onion, but it's not. It is, this happened this year, just within the last month or so, that they canceled this trip. And you would think, oh, just make a new suit, but they're $10,000 each. So they had 3 of the 4 suits. So someone didn't get one. So they canceled it. All right, so these are rejection letters to women who were applying to engineering programs. So I want you to, a couple things I want to point out. First, let's just read through some of them. We have not now, have never had, and do not expect to have in the near future any women students registered in our engineering department. That's from the University of North Carolina in 1919. We do not permit women to register in the engineering school under present regulations. Carnegie Institute of Technology, 1919. I suspect the number of women who have undertaken general engineering courses is so few that you will hardly be able to form an organization. State University of Iowa, 1919. While we cannot legally register women in the college, there is nothing to prevent our admitting them as visitors to the classes, which permits them to get all of the benefit of instruction, although without definite status as students. University of Florida, 1919. Anything repeatedly popping out to you in those rejection letters?
Did I get some we're not smart enough to get the degrees?
For sure. Like, how dare you even apply? Anything else?
You are legally prevented from even doing it.
You can't do it. Legally prevented. What about the year? What do we know about 1919? Yes, women's suffrage. So we got the right to vote. And that's when they put all these letters out there. And even though they had the right to vote and they could go to college, the universities did not allow them to. They rejected them. That top one right there is very infamous. In fact, I put it in the background of this slide so that you can see he signed it, "Very truly yours." Very truly yours. 2 middle fingers up, get out of here. So very fascinating to me. But there are some women who didn't conform to this. And there's a whole list of women engineers, but these are some of the very first. We have Elizabeth Bragg. She got her bachelor's degree in civil engineering from California. Interesting though, she never worked as an engineer. Whether or not it's because of, she decided to be a stay-at-home mom, or she couldn't get hired. There's lots that can go into this that I just don't have the information on for you. Julia Morgan from the University of California also designed more than 700 buildings in California. That's pretty amazing. And Bertha Lamb had a mechanical engineering from Ohio State. Here's why Julia and Bertha are pretty interesting. It's the first time we have 2 women in the United States that get their degree across the United States in the same year. Really unheard of. In 1968, only 5 women received their PhDs in engineering. That's 0.2% of all the PhDs in engineering. In 1972, not even 1% of engineers or women receiving their undergraduate degrees received it in engineering, not even 1%. Today, we have about 19% of all engineering degrees are held by women. So we're making a little progress. So let's talk about me, because I'm very versatile. Look how cute I was up there. I was eating ice cream or a marshmallow. So how I even got into the field I am in. I teach engineering, I teach architecture and interior design, and that's pretty much what I've taught my entire career, something to do with that. I am a teacher, so I fall under that conforming side of I'm a female teacher, but I am a female engineering teacher, which I think is the non-conforming side to this. There was a scheduling error. I went to Fortson High School, which is in Dearborn. That's where I grew up. That's my high school in the background. It looks kind of like a castle, which it's a beautiful building, fascinating story behind it we can talk about another time. But there was a scheduling error, and I had a hole in my schedule. And it's not like today with computers. It was very archaic and handwriting everything. So there was a room that was open in the hour I needed, and it was with a drafting teacher. And his name was Mr. Roberts. And I can tell you that he had probably the most profound impact on my life, obviously, look where I'm at. But I was the only girl in that classroom. And I walked in, and it can be a little intimidating when there's a room full of guys. And just because I was the only female in there didn't mean that they stopped talking their shop talk, we'll say. And so it became frustrating because not only was I the only female and I'm listening to them drone on about stupid stuff in my mind, but I also had to work twice as hard to get the same recognition. So they could turn in a drawing with smudges all over it, and they could turn in a drawing and have missing dimensions, and they would get the same grade as mine that was perfection. And because I redid my drawing 3 times so that when I handed it in, the teacher could see how serious and how good I was doing versus the kid next to me. And maybe that was just because they didn't care and I cared too much, but we got the same grade, and that can be frustrating. That made me want to continue going in. Either you love it or you hate it, and it turned out I kind of liked it a lot. My sister is an artist by trade. She paints murals and she creates children's books, the illustrations for them. And I can see the pictures in my head, but I can't put the pictures on the paper, and I get frustrated with that, where she can. But in drafting, it was all about precision, and it was all about making sure it was mathematically correct, and I could do that. And the math made sense to me because it was on the paper, it was applied, and I could figure it out. Like there was an answer to it, and it wasn't just, it looks all right there. I entered into our STEM program. It was the first one in our school. In fact, in the Dearborn area, there's 3 high schools in Dearborn. It was called FAMS, which if you know where Dearborn is at, that is the birthplace of Henry Ford. So we have the Ford headquarters down there. It was the Ford Academy of Manufacturing Sciences. It was a 2-year program, and I learned a lot about that. And I thought for sure that's what I was going to go into, and then of course I became a teacher. But I graduated in 1995, and I pursued my degree at EMU, which is industrial education with a concentration in CAD. So while I took some education classes, and I had a lot of females in my education classes, I had to take a lot of engineering classes. In fact, the same thing that my engineering counterparts were doing. And again, only female in my class for most of those classes. In 1995, when I graduated, there were about 15% of engineers were women. We've only raised it up a little bit since then, 20-ish%. I started my teaching career in South Lyon, and then I came here, and after I came here, I started up a Women in Engineering Club, and after that, then the Women in Engineering summer camps for our girls 4th grade to 6th grade. And interesting enough, when I started the Women in Engineering Club, I was hanging up posters around the school for it. And a teacher here, who I'm not going to name, came up to me and was like, "That's really interesting." And I was like, "Yeah, thanks." And I was like, "It's never going to work. You'll never get the kids in there." And he walked away. Someone said that to me. So I continued going forward, though, and I did get enough girls. And I did get enough girls to go into the camp, because guess what? We're natural problem solvers. We multitask and we like to do things, but we've been told for a long time that we don't. In 2015, I started, along with Ms. Banizak, who does our instructional technology for the district, Maker Girl Mania. Has anyone here heard of it or attended it? Okay, so a few of you have. We started our first year with 300 girls. It was really successful. We were really excited about it. We're up to around 600 girls now that attend. And it's a yearly event. Mr. Isley has come to it. And it's successful from my point of view. We'll talk about why. Maybe over here, am I too far away from it? Here we go. All right. Well, all right. Too far, kids. We've gone too far. There we go. All right. So my observations. Some things that I have seen throughout my career and my time is not much has changed. I mean, the whole reason why I started Maker Girl, the whole reason why I did the Women in Engineering Club is a lot of times throughout my day, I would only see maybe one girl. That didn't change from when I was in high school. That doesn't seem right to me. Women are about 50% of our population. They're 50% of product users. But only 7% or less actually get to design it. Something that I think is still very interesting is that safety standards still use men as the data point. So if they're using a car crash, they're going to put a male test dummy in place. And most men, on average, are going to be larger in height and weight than women. There's only one car company that started in 2011 to change that. But they're still using men, mostly. You can see that there's a little factoid I brought up there, that women have 47% higher chance of injury than male in equivalent crashes, and then that went to 71% for moderate injuries, and that's because we design our world for men, still. There's a lot of women I know that are working as engineers in industry, and so I reached out to them and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be talking to some students about women in industry. Can you give me some of your own experiences?" And many chose a STEM or a career in STEM because they either had an activity at school that kind of started the thought process, or because in most cases it was their dad was in a similar industry. So they may have brought them in to work, or maybe they had a moment in time with their dad where they did something hands-on and engineering like. For me, I can tell you that my problem solving and my engineering kind of brain was because every summer my dad and I would build stuff in the garage. So I think for like 3 years we made boats out of wood, and I learned a lot about using tools, and my dad was really great about, you know, letting me destroy things, and which I did often. I would take stuff apart and try to put it back together. There were pieces left over. Barriers that they see in industry are changing. So there's for a lot of women who go into something with engineering, many of them have left after about 2 years. Or there's a high number of women that have left after 2 years. But that's changing because a lot of women are feeling supported by their management, but they're still frustrated that they're the only female in their department still. So what's some advice that they gave? They said, hey, find a mentor. So even if they're not working in your department, find someone in your field that can help mentor you through some of the challenging areas. And there's a lot of men that want to be supportive too. They understand that there's challenges and barriers put in place. So for the men in the room, make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share equally. So it starts now. If you're doing a group project, you don't automatically hand the paper and pencil over to the girl in the group so that she can take notes. Everyone gets a chance to take notes. It shouldn't just be a girl's job or a boy's job. The building part shouldn't just be the girl's job or the boy's job. Management shouldn't just be girls or boys. It should be rotated through, and that's where we can start now. Those are things that you can do now in any of your classes, and it doesn't have to be an engineering class. It just needs to be a group project. Make sure everyone delegates out those roles equally. If we take a look at STEM in general, engineering is a really big umbrella. And there's lots of things within engineering, like environmental engineering, civil engineering, mechanical, electrical, industrial, and chemical. So you'll notice that there's a high number of girls who take engineering will end up as environmental engineers. So of that 20% of women engineers, about a third of them want to be environmental engineers. It makes sense, we want to save the planet. The other higher number over here is chemical engineers. And a lot of times women go into that so that they can make beauty products and perfume and things like that. So that's where you get those two higher numbers within the engineering field. Take a look at where mechanical engineers are. These are your product designers. Not even 8% are making them or designing them. And then only about 10% for coding, software, hardware for that. By the time a girl hits 7th grade, she's decided whether or not she wants to pursue advanced math or advanced science. And I'm not sure where you all felt when you were in 7th grade, but that's right about the time when they decided they're no longer going to go into the advanced math or the advanced science. Women make up half the workforce, but less than a quarter make up the STEM jobs, so your science, your technology, your engineering, and your math. So now this is Maker Girl and how it affects us here in Clarkston. So I already told you we started in 2015. We've grown twice as much as what we first started. Most of our kids that attend come from the Clarkston area, but we do have kids that, because we track the data, we have them coming from Ann Arbor, Saginaw, Grosse Pointe, they're from all over. About half of our attendees are Girl Scouts, and we provide about 30 different stations with hands-on activities, and they can explore all different kinds of facets of engineering, whether it's coding or problem solving by building something. And a lot of times it's very materials heavy because we want them to take it home and show their brother what they did. We want them to show their mom or their dad what they did. And we're also trying to create a moment in time. I talked about how the women I had interviewed that are in STEM jobs now, they had a moment of time, and whether it was with their dad or in school, and that's what we're trying to create, is a bonding moment that they can remember. Where do we see the impact here in Clarkston? We now have coding clubs in every elementary. Because we have so many kids that are interested in that coding, We've had to put new coding classes in at Sashabaw and soon at the junior high. We have more sections of STEAM classes at Sashabaw. I'm not sure if you're familiar with STEAM, if it was renamed something when you were there, but that includes art into it as well. If you want to be a product designer, it's not just about making sure that the part functions, it's about making sure that people want to buy it because it looks nice too. Like, I mean, we don't spend over $100,000 on a car if it doesn't look nice. I mean, it functions, but people spend a lot of money to look good while they're doing it. We have increased our female students in the engineering classes. In my classes alone this year, I had my first architecture class with 50% girls and 50% boys. That's incredible to me. More girls in our computer science classes, and more students, more females in our advanced math classes as well. So for this year, we bring in a lot of outside vendors, in addition to what we plan ourselves, but it's my Women in Engineering Club that design what our stations are going to look like. So we have some staples that kids love, which is things like making duct tape bracelets, but we're gonna have little light up hair bows, or they can do bow ties. We have jewelry stamping, and we have these recycled picture frames. So Ms. Banaszak ordered whatever she ordered for the district, and they had these little black, they look like frames to me. So I'm like, oh, recycled picture frames, that will be fun for us. And we're gonna take pictures of the kids so they can put pictures in there and remember our day. But we bring in outside people too. So MakerWorks is located in Ann Arbor, and they are, if you are interested in just building stuff, they have the facility there to build it, because sometimes owning a laser cutting machine is expensive, or having a full wood shop is expensive, or metals, 3D printers, all expensive. They have it there, you pay a monthly fee, and you can go to it whenever you want and invent and build and design. They are coming out, and for the first time, we're gonna have a soldering station. Anybody in here ever soldered before? All right, so we are gonna have our first soldering station, and I have I should have worn it. It's a badge with our logo on it, and it lights up, it flashes. So I'm pretty excited that we're gonna have that this year. We also have Foundry in a Box. Anybody in here ever cast anything out with metal? Right, so it's kind of like, what is that? You take sand and you pound it around a form, and then you remove the form and you pour in this case, tin. And then when it's all cooled, you get like this little trinket. I made a dinosaur last year. We have the Detroit Institute of Arts coming in. We're making little booklets for them to keep all their ideas in. The Michigan Science Center is coming. I think they're bringing a wind machine with them. And then we have the Society of Women Engineers that are gonna be making little catapults. And then we have school groups that come in too. Team Rush is a wonderful support to us. They have their First Tech Challenge, they have their Lego Challenge, and so that's in all of the elementaries, and so those elementary kids are seeing that too. So a lot of times at this point, students are like, oh, that sounds so cool, Ms. K, and I'm like, yes, it is. We need volunteers. We're still looking to help out on that day. So if you are interested, there's, it's gonna be on May 18th this year. That's a QR code. You can scan it and it'll take you right to our sign up link. I'll also send it to Mr. Isley so he can email it out to all of you. The day before on Friday, I usually walk through and show. Sometimes we get nervous if we don't know exactly what we're gonna be doing. So I go through and show you how to make stuff. But if you keep in mind too, every station is meant for about a third grader to do. We can dumb it down a little bit for those younger kids that maybe don't have the dexterity, or we can increase it for other kids. Like we have this one where it's an articulated clapper. So when you take and you add all of these popsicle sticks together and you open and close it, the arms extend out and then they clap. But you could increase that for the older kids by making it hydraulic. So now I'm gonna give you some syringes and a tube and some water, and you've gotta figure out how you make it, the syringe, make the hands clap. I provide pizza to all my volunteers, and I make my mom make treats. So we have cupcakes and we have Rice Krispie treats, because I'm like, get in that kitchen, Mom. Just kidding, I don't do that to her. That would be terrible if I said anything like that. And then she wouldn't make me treats, so I couldn't do that. But if you are related to me, you are forced to work Maker Girl, and so my mom contributes by making treats. And if you volunteer for the 3 sessions that day, you get a free t-shirt, something similar to what I'm wearing, but we have them in a lot of different colors. And of course, the one thing I can't bottle up and share with you is the energy you feel that day. I can't describe it to you. When you walk in that room and all those kids are there and they are running from station to station because they're so excited to try the next new thing, and they play and they practice and they problem solve until they get it right, because the key to this is success, is that they're successful. You feel that energy yourself. I can't describe it. Here's just kind of what our itinerary looks like on Saturday and Friday night, because we got to set up for it. And then here are some pictures. So for me, one of the coolest things is this little girl right here. Her name is Parker, and she's gone to this every year that we've had it. Last year, she made her own wings. Because I don't know if you noticed, let me go back. That child right there is related to me. Again, if you're related to me, you work it. And we have a costume character that we created. Her name, the character, is Millie. And she goes around kind of like if you were at Disney and the princesses are walking around, but I didn't want her to be a princess. So she makes things. She makes her costume, she makes her wings, and she goes around and she interacts with all the kids. So she's kind of like a steampunk version. My sister, again, because if you're related to me, you work it, she designed our logo and the character. I just said to her, I'm like, Wendy, this is what I want. And she captured it completely, because she's an artist and she gets it, me not so much. But Parker came dressed as Millie last year. And that, to me, just warmed my heart. And you can see us over there again. And then I thought this was a really cool picture I just happened to see yesterday. And when I was growing up, we had princesses, you know? And I love Cinderella, don't get me wrong, I love Cinderella, but you guys have some seriously cool chicks to look up to right now. And our daughters have generals. And I just thought that was really profound, that we are changing our viewpoints on what women are capable of and how they're doing it. And your generation is going to have the biggest impact, because in just a year or two, for some of you, you're going to be voting. And you make the changes at that level to start. You change it in your house. You change it now. Mr. Isley, he's changing it with his generation too, with his daughter.
I can tell you, like, she loves all those women, right? But like, Katniss from Hunger Games, Rey from
Yes.
Star Wars, her hero is Annabeth from the Percy Jackson series, who is an engineer.
I love that. There's lots of great books out there that are available now than were ever available when I was a kid. We have this book that we sell at Maker Girl, and it's bedtime stories for rebel girls. That's what it is, rebel girls. And they highlight everyone in there, from Frida Kahlo to Rosie the Riveter, you name it. And if she had an influence, she's in there. And they're beautiful pictures, and it's made to get down to a younger kid's level. They're great. So I don't know, how much time do we have left, Mr. Isley? I don't see a clock in here. 15 minutes. Okay, that doesn't give us a whole lot of time, but I thought I would entice you into seeing some of the things we do at Maker Girl. So last year, this was one of our stations, and it is, you need to use wind to move a vehicle. And I don't tell you anything other than that. I have some supplies up here, and I have a fan over here for you to try it at. I would say work as a team because I'm not sure how much time we have, but
Go.
do it, go, I'm running out of the way. And by running, I just mean walking. Run to it, I see you, you're like